Welcome to the Public Figure Society podcast, where innovation meets influence. If you're building a brand, leading a movement, or shaping the future, you are in the right place. We bring you the insights, strategies, and stories that fuel the world's most impactful public figures. It is time to step up, stand out, and leave your mark. Let's dive in. Well, welcome to the Public Figure Society podcast. And today I have Kelly Leightner, who is entrepreneur's best friend. She will whisper in your ear all the things you need to know to get your prospective client to say yes. So welcome, Kelly. How are you?
Awesome. How about yourself?
Doing well. So we were just talking, and the way I met Kelly was she was speaking at an event. I can't remember the name. What was it again called?
It was Empower and Elevate.
Empower and Elevate. And I was really fascinated by it because I'm so into language. And she was talking about there's a methodology where you can find out almost immediately how that person will communicate and how to reach them. And I was so intrigued that I took the survey. I actually was subscribing to their AIs to make sure that I was using the language right. And it's called the Decode. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about that, Kelly.
So the bank methodology was designed by a woman who, at the time, sucked in sales. Excuse my language for saying sucked, but that's pretty much how she calls it too. Her first year, she made $700 in commission. Can you live on $700?
No, I can't live on $700.
I mean, even 20, because I think it was about 20 years ago that was the case. Even then, you couldn't live on $700 a month. Not effectively, anyway. So she did all the personal development and did everything she could to figure out how to do better. And that started to help. And one day she's kind of like, well, that's great. All those tests out there tell me all about me. She's like, that's my favorite subject, of course, but that doesn't help me sell to other people.
Right.
And one day she kind of came up with the idea, what if what makes one person say yes makes another person say no?
Right.
And so she spent time delving into the personality assessments and kind of creating her own by reverse engineering them. So what she created was something that she could know who the other person was in 90 seconds or less. And all they do, if you don't mind. Oh, good. So it does show up. She designed these little cards. Well, they didn't quite look like this at the time. She was using 3x5 like index cards. And each one had 12 values on it for each of the personality types. And she would have them sort them in order of most like them to least like them. So then it would tell her the one that's most like them, those are the things you want to focus on. That's what they need to know when making a buying decision. Where the last one on the deck that they sorted would be what you would want to avoid because that's likely to make them say no. And so usually it takes 90 seconds or less for a person to crack that code. And over time, now we've even got it into a digital version, which is how you did it at the conference. I put that link up, everybody went in and cracked their code. So I know how to talk to all the people that crack their code.
Can you detect someone before they actually say something?
Yes. Most of the time. I want to put that caveat in there, most of the time, because I'm not always great at doing it by what we call speed coding.
Okay.
And that's where you're talking to the person. You start listening to what they're saying. You look at how they're dressed, how they're speaking, not just what they're saying, but how they're saying, how they're speaking it. Speed of their speech can be important. So there's a lot of times I have an idea of who I think they are, and I may test it by asking a couple questions.
Right.
Or if I'm curious enough, I whip out those cards or I pull out my phone with the digital link and ask them to do it because that's the most effective way is asking them. But you can get an idea. Specifically, you at the conference, you asked a question while I was on stage and very quickly, I was absolutely positive, caveat, my idea of absolutely positive that you were action first. I had no doubt about that. On your cute little glasses, that screams the action personality type. The way you were dressed, the speed of your speech, because you do talk rapidly, which is very common for that action personality type.
So funny. I don't even think of myself talking rapidly, but people say that. And I was like, that is so interesting. Like there's certain things that people tell you that you don't really believe, or you're like, wow, I didn't realize that about me. But it's interesting. Yes. Thank you. But it would be great if you could go through the bank code. So if you just could quickly go through the four. So what's really fascinating about it, what I like is it's fast. And I guess it's action in me, but it's fast to get to the result of how you communicate. And I think, and it was really revelation because I did their AI, which basically took the bank code of my website. And I was realizing I was attracting a client that I might not be interested in. And by shifting the language, I'm hoping that I will attract people that are more like the clients I would like to have.
Perfect. And I'd like to work with you more so that you
Yes.
understand those ones that you're like, that may not be my ideal, but help you kind of, and everybody, because this is the big thing when we get in sales, there's always a personality type that rubs us the wrong way. And once you understand that personality type and what they need, you can get to what's important for them more quickly and you can connect with them better because you're understanding that they're not doing it just to annoy you. I know for me, the action personality was the hardest. If you look, well, I don't know if everybody will be able to see this in replay, but in my name, I've got my actual bank code in there. So I'm a blueprint, knowledge, nurturing, action. So the action personality type can, if they're very action, can turn me off very quickly in a sales process. Prior to bank. Now that I know bank, action personality types sometimes become my best friends very quickly because I realize they're not doing it to be annoying. They're not. One of the things that used to strike me, especially with how fast people would talk and that they would flip from one subject to another, which doesn't work with my logical brain, is that they were crazy. But once I learned bank and I sat back and when I would get that sensation about somebody, I'd be like, oh, they're likely in action. I'd sit and watch and I would relax and kind of fall into more of their cadence. And so it would help me connect with them much better, take my judgment, because it was my judgment that was the problem in that moment, take my judgment out of it. And I'm like, okay, they're action. They want fun. They want just the basic information. They don't want a whole lot of detail. And that's because in their values, I don't know how well you guys can see that, they like freedom, flexibility, fun, winning, and they can be about their image, which kind of goes the opposite. So these two are opposite personality types. So not only is action my last, it's also my opposite. And so with blueprints, they like stability, structure, systems, planning, processes. We like information. We want things ordered. So when I talked about the actions, sometimes flitting from one subject to another and all over the place. I'm going, where are we? How did we get over here? We were talking about this.
But let me ask you this, though. Don't you think society is becoming more action oriented in their response? Like it's almost like the culture is more action oriented and is thrusting upon itself the people that might not be action oriented.
Yes. And it's where some of the disconnects can happen for that too, because the blueprint and the knowledge need it to be slower. They need more information.
Right. So we should probably go through the bank code. So if you could go through the four, like just give like 3 of the top words of each. So you kind of understand what we're talking about. So I'm action oriented. That's the red. And so Kelly here is my opposite, who is blue, structured, logical, and so forth. But it's interesting. I get a lot of clients that are that. That's very fascinating. So
that they're the blueprints.
Yes, I get a lot of blueprints. So
well, because they're attracted to the opposite. This happens in relationships too. These two tend to attract each other. You complete me. The whole Jerry Maguire thing. Right?
What about the other two then? Where do they fit in?
I will get there. So these two are opposites of each other as well. And they also marry each other.
Oh, really?
So you've got the nurturing. And these guys value authenticity. Authenticity. Don't know why I can't say that one.
Oh, that's
today.
a hard word sometimes.
Relationships. That is their biggest currency, is relationships. And in a sales process, if they feel like you're only in it for the money and you don't care about them, you don't care about your product or service that you just want to sell, you're going to shut them down and turn them off. Harmony and morality are also big things. So if they feel what you're doing isn't moral,
right,
they're going to be out as well. These guys love. They love to hug. They love connection, physical and emotional,
Right.
which is the opposite of the knowledge. Knowledge tend to not be, well, they're not usually emotional people. They're very logical.
Right.
They don't want hugs.
But they're the scientists. They're the scientists in all of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They value learning, intelligence, logic,
Right.
science, and universal truths.
So like engineers are probably a lot of.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But this is where I used to get hung up on the knowledge, because they have science as one of the main values, but there are knowledges out there that science and math are not their main thing. Take your English professors.
Right.
They're going to be a knowledge too. They're not going to value the universal truths as much or the science,
Right.
but they're still going to be logical.
Right.
And they're still going to carry a lot of the knowledge values.
So I just want to let you know, if you want to know your bank code, if you go to the show notes, we'll have a link so you can take the survey. So you're wondering, what are they talking about? Well, just go to the show notes and you can take the survey. It takes you 5 minutes and you will know your bank, which is blueprint, action, nurturing, and knowledge. And I don't know what it is, but it's really easy to remember the words. Like, she's been very good at, you don't forget. Blueprint is the logical one, step by step. It's kind of like the accountant. Action is kind of like the salesperson that's all over, the promoter, which is what I do. Nurture is the one that really cares, the more feminine, the school teacher, the kindergarten teacher, possibly. The nurse. But the nurse could also be knowledge, which is kind of like really scientific, that really stern.
See, being a nurse, I will say nurturing is my third. Many nurses are definitely nurturing. Yeah, you get into ER and ICU, they're probably going to be a little stronger on that knowledge, and their nurturing maybe just a little bit lower. Not that they won't still have strong nurturing, but they're going to have more of the knowledge because there's more information they have to know.
And this is what's so interesting for you listeners, is the bank code is, we're all a little bit mix of everything, but knowing the mix and knowing how you respond. And what I thought was really interesting. So if you ever want to write something, so what I did was, for certain people, when I'm writing and I know that they are a certain person, I will put it through the AI and say, am I being accommodating to a person I work with? A lot of my clients are knowledge and the logic, the bank, the blueprints, which are opposite of me. Because you're right. When I write, I can be very superficial. But when people of your nature and of the professor kind of nature, they want to have more of that knowledge. They want to have more of the depth. And what I liked about the bank code when I used it was to be more accommodating to that language.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the AI. So we have the artificial intelligence that we call Kai. And so it's Chat GPT with bank overlaid on it. So it will create things for you in that bank code that you're looking for. So if I'm working with Torund, I would go to Kai and say, hey, I need this personality type, which, if I remember correctly, you're a K, was it NB or BN?
Well, I redid it because you told me to redo the longer one. So the longer one put me at action first and then nurturing.
Okay.
And then they put me at knowledge, the professor, and then the logic.
Okay.
So that was kind of where I landed. But
so that is the complete opposite of my code.
Oh, really?
A and KB, I'm BK and A.
Wow.
So yeah, I definitely would want Kai when writing for you, so that I don't put too many details in right away, and give you the basics. Hey, Kai, create this for me for this bank code. And so he will shoot out whatever it was I was looking for, written specifically in that order of the code. And then if I wanted to talk to somebody else about the same thing, I can then say, hey, now create this for the BKNA.
No, it's fantastic. I used it for a client of mine where I realized I was being too superficial, because he was a knowledge guy, and knowledge nurturer, logic, and then action at the end. And so, but I just went for the top one, like the top, because that one's the one I had my weakness for it. And the report became completely different. So I know, like, if I'm going to get a blueprint, I would want to use blueprint process. It kind of helps nurturing. But what's fascinating with my writing, I realized that I write for like almost a 90% scale on nurturing, which I thought was interesting. It's like, wow, That's fascinating how we write almost differently sometimes than when we speak or what we think we are. So there is all this complexity to language, but I have to say it was very revelation, the bank code, very much. And I think today's age, when we have AI and we all need to speak more, share more of what we're thinking and collaborate with people, it's an incredible tool to be more mindful of where people are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what's important to me isn't necessarily important to the person I'm trying to communicate with. If I'm trying to talk with a nurturer, I have to remember I need more small talk. I need more connection, remembering their family, remembering important dates for them.
Right.
Those will make a nurturer so happy. It's being mindful that the other person, where me, if I go into a meeting with somebody, say I'm doing a one-on-one with somebody, I don't necessarily want to sit down and do all the little small talk. I want to chit chat because I've got a schedule. I'm on blueprint. I've got a schedule that I need to keep. And the nurturers spend a lot of time, and this is not criticizing the nurturers. This is just the natural way that they tend to be. They want to talk about you. They want to talk about your family. They want to talk about everything you've ever done. What are you doing to help save the world? I'm here for business. Let's get to the what we need to get done.
How has this changed you? How has using bank, like, how did you discover it? Because when you spoke about it, it was so convincing and I went full throttle on it. I was just like immersed in it and it really changed my writing. So I would love for you to just tell us, how did you discover this and how did it change your life?
So I'm still part of this direct sales company. I'm just not active in it at this point. And I had tried a couple others as well, and I couldn't sell any of my products to anybody, ever. Nobody was ever interested in what I was doing. But the only person who ever bought anything from us was my husband's mother. She's a big old nurturer, so she was supporting us. My family doesn't lead with nurturing. So my family wasn't buying anything. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why do people not like me? Why do people not like what I'm doing? And then I attended a training where somebody talked about this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, because with that particular product, I was leading with this, the knowledge. And I was talking about a lot of science and research and cleanliness and efficacy. And people would glaze over. I could see it, but I didn't know why. I'm like, this stuff is important. You should want to know this. And not that I said those words to them. But that's what's running through my head. I'm like, you should want to know this. It's huge. I'm a nurse. Listen to me.
Right.
No, that didn't go over so well. And once I learned this, I'm like, oh, not everybody wants to know that. I'm boring people to tears. And when they want information about it, I'm sending them all that stuff too, because again, that was important to me. My actions were probably wanting to poke their eyeballs out. They didn't want all the science and the research. They're just, the best thing I could have said to an action is, this product will help you keep looking young because you're nourishing your body and it can do what it needs to do. Right. Looking young is what they're going to hear. And they'll be like, wait a minute, now I want to know more.
Right, exactly.
So for me, it has made a change there. So I understand not everyone wants to know what I know. It's improved my marriage. My husband and I have both been trained in this, so doubly has improved our marriage because he knows now that I don't do what could be deemed as OCD just to make him crazy, because those things were important to me.
Right.
An amazing example of that is I would say, I want to leave at this time. He might start thinking about loading the car at that time. And I got so frustrated. I'm like, what is this? I looked at him one day. This was even prior to bank. I looked at him and I'm like, when I say I want to leave at this time, I mean, I want to be pulling out of the driveway at this time. He's like, oh, well, his family, when they said we want to leave at this time, they might start getting ready to leave at that time.
So what is he?
He is ANKB.
Oh, so you did really get the opposite, the action guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, sorry, he's not AN, he's NA. So we're not exact opposites, but our first two are both opposites of each other. So
what makes him, what part of the personality makes him not go on time? What's that?
The blueprint, because it's his last.
Oh, wow.
Now his dad is pretty strong in blueprint. So he probably got frustrated a lot too. But I think it was just, and that's the thing about Arizona too. The personality overall of Arizona for time is, I may say it's going to start at this time, but let's take parties. You know, when someone says they're having a party here in Arizona and it's going to start at this time, nobody shows up till 30 minutes after the start time. Used to make me insane when I first moved here. I'm like, why is everybody so late? I would be ready 20 minutes before. Everything would be out, set to go. Nobody shows up till 30 minutes after. What the heck?
I know. It's very interesting how time like that is so different from place to place and from country to country. So you could almost like deem bank codes for the nationalities.
And we do for some. America, as a general rule of thumb across the board, how we're viewed by other countries is we are action overall as a country. But again, as you know, I mean, you've met me. Obviously, I'm not action first.
No. But in terms, I think that that's true. Like, because in Norway, I would say we are knowledge.
Nice.
Knowledge is the one, and then I would say logic. I think compassion comes last.
Really?
Yeah, I would say so.
Interesting. Okay.
Or possibly maybe compassion number 3, but it's very much highly. But they do have the nurturing of taking care of their families, so it would be interesting to take a test. Country, take a test.
I say I know for that one I can't speak to because I don't know much about Norway and know.
No, but it's fascinating how it does shift things. So what when you think about the bank code and then kind of AI, how has that changed the company and how has it changed the way you're doing things, or has it changed anything?
So the way me personally that it's changed is it has made me much more efficient because I'm spending less time trying to create it, because we do have an older, what we called AI at the time, and now we're kind of calling it more of a decoder, that it would crack the code of what you had. And then you could create something and it would tell you what code it was, but it didn't create for us.
Right.
So as you're newer and trying to figure it out, it's taking forever. So now with having Kai, the actual artificial intelligence that does create, things are going much more quickly. And it helps me be more emotionally intelligent. Because again, knowing what's important to that other person and meeting what they need. And understanding that it's not all about me. I want to say for the company, it may not have necessarily changed a whole lot, just because it is the whole thing of what they've stood for this whole time.
Right.
I don't know, I'd have to think on that as to how it actually affected the company. It's probably opened doors for us because the whole advent of AI in general, people are looking for the best AI tools for what their needs are. And as people are discovering it, they're kind of like, wow, really? If I know what I need for that person, it'll help me get there faster.
Right. But it's kind of hard if you don't, like, so if you have people that you meet, how do you determine it without asking them who they are, right? That's why those cards are really nice, because then you can kind of look at and see what words goes for what. So you can get those little cards for each, like a note card, cheat card that you can take with you to think about, oh, are you this or this, this?
Oh yeah, I have so much fun at networking events, whipping out the cards. People are like, oh, what do you do? And after I give them my little elevator pitch, be like, you want to play a game? And I whip out the cards, and then I get people starting to circle around because like, wait a minute, what are you doing? I've had people ask me if I'm psychic. I had somebody once ask me, are they tarot cards? I'm like, no, they're definitely not tarot cards.
Oh, that is so.
No, I'm not psychic, but I'll appear that way because now I know what you need.
That's really fascinating. So people can get educated on this. So they would just go online and kind of learn where to do the bank code. And is there other ways of, how would you recommend, because when I'm talking to you right now, I realize it's so easy to forget what you learned because you always have to have it in top of mind. And how would you recommend that?
So we do have like an intro workshop that we do that's a no cost workshop. So people can kind of get a basic idea. about the 4 personality types and how it fits into your world. We do have a 2-day that are half-day trainings on Zoom where we actually deep dive into each of the personality types. We'll spend 45 minutes on each personality type and go into detail about each of those values.
Right.
And I love that training because I love seeing light bulbs go on people's minds going, oh, it's my husband. That's why he's making me crazy. Oh, that's my boss. No wonder we're struggling over here. But I had one woman swear I saved her marriage because, she and her husband were opposite personality types. Right. I'm hoping that's still true. So we have the 2-day trainings. Then we also have a 12-week coaching program where we take the 4 personality types and then overlay that on 6 business intelligences. And right now we're in the process of one. And so this week is emotional intelligence. The first week was personality intelligence. And then we'll have business intelligence, spiritual intelligence, which isn't religious. That has more to do than just religion. And I'm forgetting one. I can't remember what that last one is now.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you go really deep into it, so it becomes part of you.
Mm-hmm. That's the goal. Yeah. Because if we can get everybody understanding that not everybody is just like them, life can become so much happier. I mean, I had my dad one day finally crack his code. He refused to do it online for me. And I he's in Missouri. I went home for vacation and we had a 2-day training going on that I was doing from his house. And I looked at him, I'm like, do me a favor. And I had him crack his code. And when he did, he put himself knowledge first, which threw me for a moment because my mom always told me, now my parents got divorced when I was about 10.
Right.
Our mom had always said my dad wasn't very smart. So I'm like, how is he in knowledge? And I started thinking about it because my stepmom used to say how smart my dad was. And I'm like, really? And thinking about the things that he would then talk about. He would dive deep into politics and he was always shoving that down everybody's throat. It's like, ugh. Most of us didn't like it. Neither here nor there. But I thought about it. I'm like, oh, you know what? My childhood now makes so much more sense. My childhood with my dad makes so much more sense. Because knowledge is, remember I said they're not touchy-feely?
Right.
My dad, when he would give hugs, they would be uncomfortable. He was always a very stiff hug. Even though he loved us, he just couldn't put that emotion into a hug. Nurturing is his last, which now makes sense too.
Right.
Very rarely did he say, I love you. He never emoted emotions, which is typical for that knowledge personality type. And like I said, once I learned that, I was like, I get it.
Did he get it?
I don't know.
Or was it more for you?
I think it was more for me.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. And now I realize, yes, my dad has the knowledge too. And why my mom thought my dad was not all that smart. He didn't care about the things she was interested in. My mom has all these other, my mom was into theater and books and trying to be hoity-toity smart. Right. My mom is highly intelligent, has a high IQ. My dad dropped out of high school. I think he was just bored, honestly, especially at what I know now and looking back. I'm like, he was smart. He's just not interested in musicals and books. His interest is in other areas, and he would dive deep and want to know all that stuff. I remember when he got his first computer. It was in high school, or was I already out of high school? It was an old computer. He spent forever digging into that and learning about it and doing all kinds of stuff. It wasn't what his job was, but he was interested in that. So he really dove into that information. And I'm like, okay. My dad's not dumb. He just didn't care about the stuff my mom cared about.
Wow, that's really interesting. Wouldn't it be great if our diplomats learned how to utilize that?
Right.
They all need bank code.
Everybody in politics. Well, speaking of that, one of our trainers, he used to be a mayor in the town that he lives in.
Right.
And he currently works with helping people write political speeches, things like that. And he has started incorporating bank into it and showing them with their speeches that, hey, you're only speaking to this personality type. Let's kind of recraft this so you're speaking to all 4 personality types, so that you're meeting the needs of what your constituents would want, or what they would
what I
want to
love
know.
about, because I only use Decode. I didn't use Kai. I used just Decode. I liked the Decode one. That was my, like, I would put the text into this Decode place on the bank code website, and then it would spout out percentage. You have 10% knowledge, 5% bank, the blueprint. And it was fascinating just by shifting a couple of words. I was also speaking to a group that I'm not really resonating with in the way I speak, but it helped me find a way to speak to them, which was very, very powerful.
We have a class for that too. That usually happens maybe once a year, what we call power scripting. And so it is learning how to write and put things together to speak to all the personality types, whether you want to focus just on the one, or whether you want to, what we call, speak the rainbow of all 4. And so, yeah, the training for that can be a lot of fun because there's competition. So the actions are always competing to be number 1 and get the medals that can be won from that.
That's where I'm not really in action, because I'm not really competitive. So
no, that part doesn't work.
I'm not at all. No.
That's because your nurturing is also high.
That's probably.
Nurturers want everybody to win.
Yes, that's me.
That makes sense.
I want all to win. So I'm not that competitive. No, not at all. But that's really fascinating. So, it does help. It's very, very helpful. So we're coming to a close. It's very interesting that you're saying how it's changed you. Where is bank going as a company, and how do more and more people get to know about it? And what are their visions and goals for what they're doing?
Ooh, so the creator, her goal is to empower and connect humanity. Because she realizes there's such a disconnect out there with, and it's going to get worse with all the VR. There's going to be more people living in VR versus connecting with real life people. One of the things that they're working on is bringing this into schools.
Oh, really?
Think about a teacher and all the personalities they're dealing with their students. And then I say take that one step further. You've also got the personality of their parents.
Right.
So, making sure that communication works for all of them.
Right.
And so I know they brought it into their son's preschool, and the school absolutely loved it. And so they're doing all the way preschool, all the way through high school. And there's actually some colleges that are implementing it as well. Trying to think where else we're headed with it. I mean, those are the big things at the moment, is just trying to get people to reconnect and re-engage and understand that not everybody is interested in the exact same things in the same way.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting, because you think of your personality as all right and everyone else is wrong, right? When you're talking to people, and it's not so. And what I have noticed now that I'm talking to you is, how do I keep it always in top of mind? Because it's easy to forget it.
So I know with the group of trainers that I work with, once you've attended a training, you can always come back and repeat that training for free.
Okay.
So that's one way of keeping it on mind. Another thing is, I always, if I had to look at my nurturing because I couldn't remember a couple of the words I wanted to use,
yeah.
I always keep these at my desk. And when I'm talking to somebody, I will move the cards around based on how they're speaking at that moment. Oh. Because if we hit something and they start getting stressed, we're going to see that more of their third code show up. I didn't get into I try not to do that in an introductory type information.
No.
Into higher level, but each position means something. And so I move things around. If all of a sudden what's their third, that's how they're talking, I have to shift and start addressing them in that personality type for a little bit until, they shift back. So we do flow through our codes depending on what's going on in the moment.
Right.
When I get stressed out because nurturing is my third, usually what I do is self-soothe by watching TV. I have to just take a break from everything for a little bit. Or sometimes call up a girlfriend and go meet and have girl talk. Right. Needing that personal connection in that moment. Or there's a dark side to each code. And with the nurturing, if I'm in stress, that dark side might show up, and that can be nasty or needy. So my husband usually sees the nasty. He may see the needy too, depending on what the situation is. I need this done now.
Yeah, but it's I have to say it's one of the best frameworks because, I've done Myers-Briggs, I've done, the DISC, and yeah, but you're right, it's about us. But this really is about how do I meet the person that I'm talking to and how do I meet them where they need me to be. And I was really surprised by how effective it was and how quick it was. It's just like, oh, this is what it is. All right. And sometimes you can predict it when you see people, but there is something about being mindful of other people. And this is an amazing tool, at least now with AI and, the younger generation being less adept to talking to people because there's so much online. It can help with their interpersonal skills.
Yes. Where was I? I just was somewhere where I think it was the networking meeting yesterday. Somebody said something that the Gen Z group are being fired at an alarming rate because they don't know how to communicate well.
Wow.
I'm like, that's kind of scary if you think about it. How are they going to continue to either that or we have to adapt? Those of us that are the older ones in the group, have to adapt to the way the Gen Z communicates. And maybe it's both. Gen Z needs to learn how to communicate and be able to interact. And we may need to learn how to disconnect and interact less. I don't like that one personally. That bugs this part of me.
I know it's a fascinating time to think about, but at least now with AI helping us with the communications, really helped me to rainbow communicate my things. At least some of the services I've done, and then but I realized you can't really move away from who you are. And so when I was doing bank coding on people that I admire, that I'm kind of looking to the way they do their language, and one of them, his name is Donald Miller, and his writing is like 85% nurturing, which was really interesting. All of his stuff is that, and he's one of the most popular business writers, brand strategists in the world. And all his language is about 90% nurturing. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So I did bank coding on key people I liked, and I realized that there's some point that you can't really be a rainbow. You have to be the color that you're meant to be, right? And write the way you are because it's your authenticity. So yeah, you can meet people where they are, but I do believe, as at least now that I'm writing, I'm not using the bank code anymore because I realized I need to write for my authenticity. I can meet people where they're at and do their reports according to what they want to do, but I do believe some of the way that you are is the way you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was going to say, as you were talking about the book, it reminded me, one of our trainers, she was writing a book. She ran it. We didn't have Kai yet. She ran it through the decoder, and it was coming out knowledge. It was very high in knowledge, and she was writing a book that needed to be more nurturing.
Right.
And so she called her editor. It was due shortly. She called her editor. She goes, I need more time. And so she went back and completely rewrote the book. And she is actually nurturing herself. So it was surprising that she was writing in knowledge, but not when you realize what her job had been previously, was writing like books for software. So that was a knowledge writing. So she was used to writing in knowledge, even though nurturing was first. And again, with what she was writing, the audience she was wanting to write it for was nurturing. So she had to go back and reconfigure it. Otherwise, it was going to fall flat because it would have been too technical or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's what you're trained to be, right? So interpersonal skills, communication skills are complicated, but kind of coming to a close for this. And you can get, Kelly does do speaking. So if you want to have her for a speaking engagement, she does workshops here in the Valley, as we call it, Phoenix area. I didn't know what the Valley was when I first moved here. What is the Valley? Well, the Valley is East Valley, West Valley. What is this? Well, it's just certain parts of Phoenix, right? But if you want her to speak, and if you want to have someone speak in your area, you could just reach out to Kelly. We'll have all our information there. But kind of looking ahead, as a public figure that you are, what is your mission for what you do with Decode, and how do you want to lift humanity up with what you're doing?
I really want to solve the problem for people that I had, the fact that I wasn't connecting because of where I was coming from. So I want to improve people's lives. I mean, like I said, it made me better at what I was trying to sell and how I was connecting with people that way. It made my marriage better, my kids. It definitely, I wish I had known this when my kids were little. Their teenage years may have been much easier.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I can help with and improve just relationship. Like I said, I now understand my dad, so that was huge. I definitely understand why my mom is the way she is now too. Less of a surprise than my dad was. Yeah, I just want to make everybody be able to communicate effectively with everyone else. So there's less misunderstanding, there's more understanding, and more of a content feeling everywhere around the world. Because I mean, we do have this being trained in other countries as well.
Right. I would highly recommend. We're going to have the link in the show notes so you can take the test. I highly recommend take the test. I would say it's one of the best personality tests. I will incorporate that now, which I do with my clients, just to know how to write the proposals and how to make them, or the reports that I do for them. So like now I have reports according to the Decode, at least the major one. Like, so this one's a little bit more of a logical process blueprint. I'll put blueprint, process, plans, because it's the same thing, but it's that's how they receive it. And then when it's nurturing, I'm much more focusing on the touchy-feely kind of free that, and then that's kind of how it's been working. So it's been wonderful help. So thank you so much. I was so impressed
you took off with that and just did it. I was like, that is so cool, Torund. I love you.
No, because language, I've studied, like, language creates action, right? And some does not create inaction. So I have like a business service that's just here for the Valley, for Arizona, and it's like a done for you project. And when I was doing it, I realized just by forgetting to put done for you, people were misinterpreting my whole website, right? So we come from a framework, we think we're communicating. My colleagues thought we were communicating the right way. And then suddenly you get a receiver, and it's our responsibility that the person receives our language the way they need it to be received. It's not their responsibility. Like a lot of times, oh, you misunderstood me. No, you misunderstood the person that's receiving the message, right? And so that when I was like, wow, I have to shift this around a bit. So it's very, very helpful. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Because like I said, I was so impressed with you taking off and just doing everything. And I'm like reaching out to you going, hey, Torund, how's it going? And didn't hear from you. I'm like, and then when you did get in touch with me, you're like, oh yeah, I did this, and this, and this with it. I'm like, oh yeah. Awesome.
I shifted all my websites, all of it. I rewrote everything because I wanted to be more rainbow. So, but anyways, thank you so much for the talk. And until next time. Thank you for listening to the Public Figure Society podcast, where innovation meets influence. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, follow, and leave a review. Connect with us on social media and join the conversation. Until next time, keep innovating, keep influencing, and we'll see you in the next episode.